And what I hope to do is build on the momentum of an early start of the fall. We might have 2 or 3 meetings, and then again in the winter and spring to kind of gear up towards some research that we've never done before, at least in terms of the kind of thrust that we're going to have this year. So I don't know what the future will hold, but I do want to kind of go through the agenda which was sent out. And I'm going to read from it unless you'd like me to screen share it briefly. Would that be okay, or does?
Whatever you want, Rob. I've got it open on my desktop, but whatever you want.
Me too.
All right. So the goal of the meeting is to engage interested and gifted community members like yourselves in developing innovative tools to physically manage itch-causing parasites in high-risk shallow water areas. And I think this lends itself to some good discussion. And the agenda starts out with me first giving an introduction to everybody. I'm assuming with this particular crowd that everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go with that. Secondly, we're going to talk about the recent history of swimmer's itch control as we have known it for decades, and now making a sharp turn in our strategies. So as you all know, in 2017 and 18, we conducted studies where we could now differentiate worms in the water, and we could determine how many life cycles were actually operating, and we found that it wasn't just the common merganser duck and the Trichobilharzia worm and the Stagnicola snail, but there were other worms and other snails and other birds that were playing out. We knew that, and I think in the early 80s, but to the degree and sophistication and resolution of what we now have with the advent of the qPCR, we can really take a hard look at how we look at swimmer's itch in the future. And so we're looking at a paradigm shift of trying to do lake-wide systemic eco-manipulative tactics of trying to trap and relocate birds and scare all the mallards away and try to trap geese, that we're going to now focus on the actual swimmer that typically will go in the water and hopefully not get the itch. And sometimes we don't know exactly why they're not getting it. It could be genetic. It could be that the conditions were just perfect for not getting it. It could be that the protective measures that they're employing are actually working and working well, and that for whatever reason, we don't want that to be the secret that gets out in Glen Lake, that there's a few swimmers out there that are swimming a lot and using some preventative strategies, but we don't know exactly what those are. Fortunately, we have Ron Reimick in this meeting, and he's been thinking a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe longer, about prevention strategies. And you've heard about some of these. I'll quickly run through them. He's thought about bafflings and skimmers and worm crushers and nylon fabrics that might repel, as well as skim creams, just a whole gamut of things. When to swim, where to swim, how to swim. These are all strategies that can maybe be coupled with some good research to kind of measure the efficacy of some of these strategies and put some data behind it, and then to go beyond that in the next 2 or 3 years with a combination of things. We might be looking at fostering entrepreneurship with data-driven strategies that would be something that somebody could go out and promote to riparians in some sort of service orientation or marketing products. We don't know where this is going to land, but we certainly know that in past discussions, we're going to detract from any conversation that talks about the Glen Lake Association taking up a new business adventure. We're not going to be talking about going into any kind of research that's not going to be productive and conclusive and showing the efficacy of some of these strategies. So that when we do go out, we might make mention of some of these strategies talk about some of the research that's behind it in 3 years from now, and then possibly be able to get people to try it. And I think what we're looking at is the start this coming summer of 2021 of a multi-year, 2 to 3 years, and a multi-lake approach to this prevention research. That it's not going to be just the Glen Lake Association that will engage in this kind of research if we in fact do, and this is all for discussion. I don't want to sound like a freight train coming down the track and everything's been decided. But I do feel like there's a lot of other lakes in our area that want to get involved. And in fact, as we think about this very committee that we're assembling today, what we referred to as the Glen Lake Association's Technology Committee, minus, of course, Rick Fink and minus Bill Meserve and minus Dale DeYager. Cal, I think you're the only one that has been able to show up for this meeting, but it's recorded. But Ron and I have talked about the possibility of some real sharpshooters from other lakes joining this group in future meetings. People who might be retired engineers or some sort of passion for learning about prevention strategies, how to measure them for their efficacy, and maybe how to spin off from this development of a think tank to spinning off some entrepreneurial ships that would allow maybe some business owners in the future to be able to serve our clientele. And I'm talking 2 to 3 years out. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Ron. He's going to take about 10 minutes to talk about some of his vision. So take good notes. He's got some great ideas, but then we want to foster more ideas than just his to move forward. So go ahead, Ron.
There's something burning with me that I'd like to get settled before we go forward.
Sure.
Do you know what happened this year and how it compared to previous years?
Well, thanks to you and your report a case through our website, we had some good analytics about reporting swimmer's itch cases. And so we gained a lot of insight there, and we found that we were, quote unquote, losing the battle. We got data and statistics for the first time from Patrick Hannington, who I have not shared the data with you, Cal. I can do that right after this meeting, but we have the analytics for reporting a case from his website. And I would, at first glance, argue that we were pretty much in the same high level of cases being reported, and there was no appreciative decline in itch cases. It looked like a pretty normal spreadsheet.
Okay, my experience was we got almost none here, and we got killed the year before. So I didn't have any idea if the whole lake was like that or not. So that's good to know.
Yeah, good question. All right, Ron.
Yeah. So before I jump into that, just to add to what Rob said, we, back in 2017 and 2018, we were full for remove the mergansers. That's it. That's going to solve all your problems. And then because of technology and because of unexpected results, people getting swimmer's itch when we didn't expect they'd get swimmer's itch, we were scratching our head and actually it really forced us to learn more and more and more about what's really going on. And then, the new species came into being, and that's showing up in your lake and so on and so forth. So it really is, we got to a point where there really needs to be a paradigm shift if we really want to have people, myself included, have my granddaughter swim out here and not get swimmer's itch and not worry about it, ruining the vacation or whatever. That we really need to focus on prevention strategies or management strategies. So I think the disconnect comes where I have a lot of ideas in my head, but I'm science oriented, right? I'm a science person. I'm not a manufacturer. I'm really a terrible business person. I'm not wired that way. I'm a science person. but I have all these ideas. So why wouldn't I just go and create these things? And if I have all these great ideas, why wouldn't I go out and just make them and use them and sell them? And well, I don't, there's a missing thing there. There's a missing, I don't have that skill set to take some idea and design it, improve it, market, manufacture it, get it out to the people so they can use it. There's a lot of steps in there that aren't ever going to happen with just me. And then before I tell you, we also have to make sure that we understand that anything and everything we do starting next year, as far as assessing these different things or creating a new skimmer or a new, it's all public knowledge so that anybody can do anything they want with it. It's not like we're creating something and then we're going to test it and show that that it works and then go to market with it. That would be a conflict of interest. I can't, as a scientist, I can't be assessing things that I'm going to then, make money on. So let's just get that straight right away, that anything and everything that we do is going to be fully out there, and any entrepreneur could take it and run with it. So we're not in it for that reason. We're in it to try to help people. And then one more thing, I don't think many people realize this, but in biology, we have model organisms. So like the fruit fly is a model organism for genetics. We've learned so much about genetics through the fruit fly. Well, I know it bothers a lot of people and it ruins vacations here in Michigan, but this swimmer's itch is really a model organism for schistosomiasis. And if we can come up with ways to prevent swimmers from getting swimmer's itch, that might save lives, because those techniques could be used in other parts of the world to actually stop the cercari from entering the skin of humans, where it's going to develop and actually cause great pain and suffering and death. And so if I could think of a more worthy cause, I can't think of a more worthy cause than for us to put our heads together and let's come up with ideas and try them and see if we can come up with ways to prevent cercari from entering the skin. And gosh, this could have worldwide ramifications, and that's really cool. It's what drives me, and I'm excited about that. And I happen to think that some of the ideas that are going to work, I haven't even thought of, and they haven't been thought of yet. They're going to be new ideas that are going to come from people like you that are going to say, well, what about this? And I'm going to sit back and say, why didn't I think of that? And I love that. I hope that happens so that we can together work and create ways to prevent this parasite from entering our skin, where it really doesn't kill us and it really doesn't do anything but ruin the vacation. But if that could apply to the rest of the world, it would be an absolute grand slam home run. So that's what we're shooting for, which is kind of cool. So ideas, I'll just run through them real quickly just to get the juices flowing here. We did a study where we removed snails inside we have the baffles. Well, we know, and Edward said this earlier right away, we know the worms come out in the morning and we know they go to the surface and they hang there for the day. And then we know they only live for a day, and then we know the wind moves them around. And by late afternoon, they're dead or been eaten. They're important parts of the ecosystem. So we put these baffles up because if the wind is blowing like this, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to protect an area? And we showed that sure enough, it does. It works. The baffle thing works. So then we removed snails from inside this 50-foot by 50-foot area, and we took water samples before, and we took water samples outside day after day, and we showed that there's lots more worms outside than inside. And well, that makes sense, because if you don't have snails, you don't have the larvae coming out every morning. And so wouldn't it be cool if, and I have ideas on all these things I'm going to tell you, I have ideas in my head. I just haven't ever sat with the right people to say, could you make something like this? What if we had something that you could remove the snails? And by the way, we did that in an hour, 1 hour of work. By running lines, transects, and just collecting snails, we got essentially all the snails that carry parasites out of that area. Wouldn't it be cool if we could lay something on the ground around your swim area, ground on the sand in the water, that the snails would come up to it, and then the snails couldn't climb over it. So that if you went out in early June and removed all the snails out of your area and put them in other places, because they're good for the ecosystem, but if you removed them and put them over somewhere else, and you had this swim area, and you had these barriers, wouldn't that be cool? Because then you're good for that year, maybe you're good for years, because there aren't snails in that area. And if you don't have snails, you don't have swimmer's itch. So that would be one. I'm thinking of a baffle that doesn't, and again, I have some ideas, but a baffle that does it stops the cercari, but it doesn't just let them accumulate on one side of the baffle. Because if they accumulate on one side of the baffle, you're really going to piss your neighbors off, right? And so what if we had something where the larvae, the cercari came up and they came in and they actually got trapped? So it was like an accumulator of cercari. So the water kept coming, blowing in, and then the cercari got trapped and they couldn't come out. So it's no worse on either side of the baffle. Well, it'd be worse on one side of the baffle because they can keep blowing in, but they don't accumulate on one side of the baffle. So I think baffle improvement would be a whole nother area where we could design baffles. We don't need baffles that cost $550 for a 50-foot section that's meant to prevent oil spills in the ocean. That's what I have right now. That's what we were using. Well, we don't need that to prevent microscopic organisms from drifting into a swim area. So the whole baffle thing design, we need to put our heads together and think of a way that we could do that. And if it was out there right now, I'd put one up right along my dock, and it wouldn't be in the way. And when the wind is blowing around, I'm looking out at my lake right now, the wind's blowing from the south, my whole swim area would be protected because that baffle would be along my dock, and that I'd be on the lee shore, lee side of the baffle, and it would be safe to swim there. And so baffle design would be a way to do that. Another one that I'm really certain, and again, we have initial data on all of this. So this isn't like, something we dreamt up and haven't tested. We have like first order of testing data on these things. Is the skimmer. And I just bought one of these 4-foot pool skimmers with they come with a pole, but we just put it on a rope. And then we replaced the netting with 20 micron mesh netting. And I am absolutely convinced that if it's a still day, the wind's not blowing, the worms are just kind of coming up and hanging out, and those are the days the kids like to swim, I'm fully convinced that if I went out and you gave me 10 minutes and I just walked around pulling this skimmer, 4-foot skimmer, and by the way, you can make them 8-foot, you can make them 10-foot skimmer. If I pulled that around the swim area, I would eliminate 90+% of the worms that have come out that day that are sitting at the top waiting for a duck to come along. And so it wouldn't take very much time, and we could clear that area and the kids could swim, and swimmer's itch isn't going to be a problem. But I have one of those, the one that I made, that I bought from the company for the pool, scraping leaves off your pool, and I modified it. And there it sits in my garage, and that's as far as it's gone. I proved that it's sure enough, it works. But it's stuck there. It's stuck. People have asked for them, and I said, well, I don't have them. I don't sell them. I can tell you what I did. But so that's an idea to skim them. And I have the remote control boat in my. They'd make that skimmer boat, and I have that sitting in the barn. and it's just sat there for a couple of years because I tried it. It worked. And I replaced the little net. And again, it's made for pools, but I replaced the net with 20 micron net. And we skimmed the area inside this baffle. And, you know, we know, I mean, there's no question that these things will work if they're designed right and priced so that people could afford them, you know, so that they could say, well, you know, we'll go out and we'll use this and, you know, not get swimmer's itch. Let's see what else. I did the smasher, you know, that was more high, I think more costly because I had that pump, and they're fragile. They got the head and they got the forked tail, but there's a joint right there, and they will break in half. And when they break in half, they're more dense than water. They'll sink to the bottom, and they're fragile little worms. And so what if we had I don't know, a paddle boat, like the old fashioned boats that had the you know, and then we just beat up the water like we did a 2-minute blender of the surface water. You know, you're gonna destroy the worms. I have thought about using electricity of some, like a low voltage type thing, but that I don't care to. I'm not an engineer. I'm not, but you know, you could, you know, give them a shock or something. I was thinking, I do a lot of my thinking when I think about mosquito, how we manage mosquitoes, right? And so the zapper of the mosquito zappers, and I was thinking, wow, I wonder if we could do some sort of zapper, and you know, do that. And I also thought about if you had a baffle running along the dock, and then you had another one right next to it, so you got two of them running right along the dock. Oh, the kids want to swim. Okay, and let's say they're 50 feet. Let's say it's 100 foot long. So it's you know, the wind is blowing and it's protecting your area, or maybe the wind's not blowing, but you take the other one and you just pull it out, like, you know, seining minnows. It'd be like seining minnows, but let's seine cercari with a 100-foot seine that it's real light. It has floaties on the top and it drops down in the water about this far. And let's just seine them. And then that would take you, what, 3 minutes to slowly seine an area? Now go ahead, kids, go swimming. You know, I mean, that's another idea that is in my head, that like, wow, we should just invent a seine that seine the cercari. So anyway, I don't know, Rob, is that what you were thinking? Those are just ideas that are in my head. And
well, we got two more categories, one of which would be the protective clothing, you know, the swimsuit that covers all parts of your body that you don't want to get itch risk. The second one is topical creams. And the other point I think we should talk about is how we might run the itch prevention in terms of volunteers registered and ready to go for the start of the summer. We'll call them the volunteer swimmer. Why don't you go into some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I've thought a lot about this, and you know, I don't think report a swimmer's itch case. I don't think it works very well. I'll be flat out honest. And here's how I know. We had one on Lime Lake this summer. One of our board members likes to do that, and he created a really nice report your case, you know, GPS looking, blah, blah, blah. My granddaughters got swimmer's itch right in front of our place several times. We didn't report it. Why didn't we? What? We're the biologists. We're doing this. Why didn't we report our case? I don't know. It was like
shoemakers not allowed to report that their granddaughters are running around without shoes.
Right. And I'm like, so I thought about that though. Why wouldn't I take the time to report a case? Because you know what? What's the point? And so here's what I thought. I thought, you know what we need? We need to have these people have skin in the game. And by skin in the game, I mean similar to, say, what we did with enteric bacteria this year, where, hey, you want to be part of this enteric bacteria study? You know, we're studying septics and we're going to do, you know, fly the drain field and so on and so forth. You're going to have to pony up a couple $100 to be part of that. And it's great. It's a donation on your part, but you're actually part of this big science project, this initiative. And if we could actually sign up people to say, you, Edward Lanfear, you are part of this study. We're putting you down. You are part of the study. What does that mean? That means you're going to report every time somebody on your property goes swimming, whether they use prevention or not, whether they swim for 10 minutes or 2 hours, whether they got swimmer's itch or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to report because you're part of our study. You're actually you are part of this initiative, not just, hey, report your case. If you get swimmer's itch, we want you to report your case. I just don't think that works anymore. We've been doing it for years and years, and it's kind of gotten old, and we need to really, I think, enroll people into this project. And whether they pay or not, that's debatable, but I think they would be willing. Most people that are plagued by the itch would be willing to you know, pay $100 or $200. But then what we'd want to do is have at each lake, and I'm thinking big here. I'm thinking many lakes with many volunteers. If a lake association says, yeah, you know what, we want to be part of this. This is really good. What we would do is have at that lake, and your guys would be golden for this because you have like 5 collection kits. You have, you know, 5 people trained to do the collection. But what you would do is you would, like, maybe with a Google Doc or something, you would have that lake biologist, that person, that volunteer say, well, hey, you fill in when you think you're going to have kids up, grandkids are going to be up, you think you're going to be swimming. And if I can, I'm not going to, you know, my whole life's not going to revolve around this, but if I can get over there, I'm going to come to your place on July 6th because you said you're going to have kids. All right, I'm going to come over and I'm going to take a water sample. Now, if it's raining on July 6th, I'm not coming. But if it's one of those beautiful sunny days, I'm coming over. I'm going to get a water sample. Because if we can take and know how many worms are in the water, and now you report, oh, I had 6 kids, and here are the ages, and here's prevention we did use or didn't use, and how many got swimmer's itch, and how long they were swimming. All of that would be reported on a special page on the website, Patrick's website. And by the way, we need to do it on, you know, through his website because of the whenever you're working with human subjects, you got a whole level of red tape you have to go through, right? And so he has that, we have that. But anyway, if we could then, and it wouldn't happen every time, you wouldn't, you know, sometimes you're going to go swimming and we didn't test the water, but we're still going to get valuable information from you about who went swimming, how long did they swim, you know, was the wind onshore or not? You know, wow, it would be a huge database.
I gotta interject. I don't see the value in that, any of that.
Really?
So what if we find out people got swimmer's itch in a certain place? How much is that going to tell us that we don't already know? It's going to tell us if we're making things different, maybe, but because this group got swimmer's itch this day at this time in this condition, we've done that. Where does it let us?
Well, what we're hoping is that they're going to use prevention strategies.
Oh, that's not what I heard as a part of this.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the whole point, was that most of the time people that are involved in this, they're going to try some of the various.
So they're going to measure the prevention.
Yeah.
The efficacy.
That's okay. So then while I've interrupted, then I'll tell you some other thoughts I had.
Sure.
When you went through your list of what works, what doesn't work, what we've tried, what kind of works, I kept thinking there's 3 important measures to these things. And those three things are the cost of it,
Mhm.
the convenience or ease of use of it, and the effectiveness of it.
Right.
And I'll tell you, since I had a bunch of people here all summer, I hadn't gotten my first cup of coffee, and the little kids were out in the shore and they got swimmer's itch first thing in the morning before any waves were up or anything else. And it would have been damn inconvenient for me to have to stop them if I could, or go out there with a net or many of these other things that we've talked about. So it leads me to believe that unless we make these things easy and all time, full time, which means automation, or maybe not. Maybe your snail barrier, if that could be done, and if they can't climb over it and waves won't affect it, that makes it very convenient. If you do it once and it's done, that's very convenient. But I just think that the convenience is a huge factor
Yeah.
of this. People just won't put the clothes on. They just won't go even look at their phone and say, is this a high circaria day for this part of the lake? They're going to take their chances.
Okay.
And so I'm for measuring these ideas with those 3 points in mind. And in fact, I would throw water on things, infected water on things that that don't seem convenient, or I would put brain power against making those things convenient. So the net, very inconvenient.
Yeah.
If you had an automatic boat that went out there or some other method to sweep those things up at 6 a.m., that's gold. That does it. Does it cost me $300, $500? Done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't care. Okay, I've said enough.
No, those are good. Those are good points. I think you're right. Convenience is, I think it varies from person to person. And I think it's probably correlated with the severity of the itch. Like if somebody, just even looks at the water, they get swimmer's itch. Those people are probably willing to put more effort into it. Maybe, I don't know. So yeah, I agree. It has to be simple. It has to be
Cheap.
It's
got to be convenient.
Yep. I totally agree.
I totally agree.
The fourth thing I'd add, and I agree too, but the fourth thing I'd add is relative to alternatives. And the reason I say that is in the last year or so, although Rob's been doing this for a long, long time, we've been telling people they simply need to just paddle out past the blue line and swim safely outside the blue line. And so Cal, I had the same thing. We're both on the North Shore, predominantly south winds, grandkids here. Every single time, morning, they wanted to go swimming. And even the little ones, life jackets, they got on a sup with their parents, or they got on a jet ski and just went out to the blue line and jumped in and played and so on. So I agree. Cost, convenience, efficacy, and the last one I'd add is alternatives.
Yeah. So I see those as our goals as a group. If we want to proceed with this, would be those have to be our absolute objectives, is to keep the cost down, to keep the efficacy up. The convenience factor has to be always at a foremost in our mind. And I like your idea, Cal, of automated. I hadn't even thought of that, but gosh, what if you had it on a timer and whatever it was, just yep, took care of it. That'd be, you're muted.
I got a habit of doing that. I had a pool skimmer in Texas. Boy, that was great. It cost me $500 for jacuzzi or whatever brand it was. Yeah. And it climbed the walls and it kept the pool clean, and that was fantastic. So I didn't mind paying that cost for that effectiveness and that
Right.
ease of use. So yeah, while I've got this mic on, have we looked at any ways to make the snails release the worms? Do we know why and when they do it?
Yep. It's a period of darkness, and then it's the light. It's light after a period of darkness.
So
sensitivity.
So could we at 4 a.m. shine lights out there and make them release their snails? And we got 2 hours on them now or something. I don't know.
Yep. No, that would absolutely work. Yep.
Do we know, do we have any methods of seeing or locating the cicada? They're too small, I'm sure, but has there been any dyes or anything that allows us to see them easily?
No, there is not. They're microscopic. So
they're transparent too.
And they're transparent. They're clear. Yeah. So I am working on a new idea. I didn't get very far this summer just because of various reasons, but on how to actually, because I think that'd be a game changer. Kind of like if you think about COVID. Gosh, if you could right now just go
see who's infected.
Yeah.
Everybody's had that thought.
You know, and if we could do that, where you could say, wait a minute, grandkids, let me just test the water a minute. Oh, well, yeah, go ahead, swim. If we could do that, that'd be another home run. And I'm working on that. And it's based on the biology of the cercary and the movement of the cercary, but I'm not there yet.
Okay.
So yeah, I am working on it. So it'd be like the poor man's qPCR, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah,
a way to assess how many are in the water without running the qPCR.
Do we know if they, on any given day, are they mostly forgot the word, scattered about in a standard method, or are they hot spots here and hot spots there?
Yeah,
I'm afraid it's hot spots.
Yep, I think
really messes things up.
Yep, I think that's a great question too. I think the hot spots are due to snail density, and that changes. So just say that every year, snail density. No, we're finding that snail densities are.
I mean more like this 6 feet is okay, and this 6 feet over here is not.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that that magnified of that resolution, but we do know that if there's an onshore wind, they're going to be in the first, it's piling up right in the first, couple feet. But we don't know, if you went out 2 feet and 10 feet and 15 feet, if it just slowly went less, we don't know. We haven't done that kind of resolution. We do know that some days are worse than others, and we do not know why.
Okay.
And one study that we're doing this summer, when we had, you guys are part of that, is we're trying to figure out what the drivers are so that we can put up a green flag day or a yellow flag day or a red flag day based on environmental drivers of these things. We don't know what that is, but we're hoping to find out, because that would be valuable as well for people.
Yeah, Ron, there's a whole another arena of people outsmarting the itch by, swimming beyond the blue line and into the deep water. A lot of the pontoon boats, which are becoming more and more popular and are replacing ski boats, and especially with the big motors now, they're essentially a fast boat with a big motor. And more people are swimming in the deep water. And I know that because this summer I just was marveling at how many people were swimming with small children in the deep water. And so what do you do to make sure safety is paramount on that? And the answer is, off the bow of the boat, you can create literally an enclosed swimming pool with an actual bottom where you can't just sink down below. And I mean, you get caught in this it's like a safety net for a trapeze artist. And then you have the floats around the perimeter. So you essentially are creating a swimming pool for the young kids who want to swim in the deep water. And so it's one of the things. And then the other thing I'm noticing more and more are these rollout swim rafts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
And,
Yeah.
and they stack it on the front of the pontoon boat. They go out with their family. They unroll this big, huge floating mat. I'm talking big, like a wrestling mat in a high school. Cal, you'd be interested in this. So you got everybody playing on this mat, and you know, the kids that are needing a life jacket are safely in a jacket, and everybody's having a blast. But the last thing you want is your family to skip that extra effort to go out in the middle of the lake and swim in the safe water, is to have them swim in the shallow water and get nailed by swimmer's itch. So I think there's some real satisfaction that I'm getting by seeing a shift. And maybe what I'm looking at are more and more rental boats where people don't have docks and shorelines. And those are the people who come and visit our lake and aren't getting the itch because they don't have a dock and a shoreline and shallow water to wade in.
The only people that are not getting the itch are the people that are here bothering us.
So I would say though, Rob, for me, and this is again personal, but my convenience meter just went way in the red on that. Like, are you kidding me? Every time my 2-year-old and 4-year-old granddaughters want to go swimming, I got to get the boat out. We got to go out. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah,
it won't happen.
I understand.
So, you know, but everybody's different, right? That's my point is,
yeah,
I would not do that. I would say that is super inconvenient. Not going to do it.
You know, what's more inconvenient though is to go to bed at night with your legs peppered with itch and you can't sleep for 3 nights.
I agree, but I still agree with Cal that we have to continually keep convenience as an absolute top priority on anything we are looking at.
I agree.
Because otherwise, it will not work. It just won't happen.
Yeah,
I attest to that. It will not happen unless it's easy to do.
I got 2 more questions on my list.
Cal, can you hang on for just a second? Because we've got Edward and Trish who haven't said much. Do you guys want to jump in at this point? You're good, Trish? How about you, Edward?
I do, yeah. That shocks you, I know, Rob. But I've got about 15 minutes, just FYI. So, Cal, with that in mind, if you want to do your 2 more, I'm happy to wait.
They're quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you use a vacuum cleaner to scoop up snails with a net that had holes? So that's been tried and that works?
No, I designed a snail vacuum and it never got past I had it like a turkey baster thing. So I wanted to be able to, when I see a snail, done. That was my idea. Like, I see a snail. So I invented this snail net. So I have this pole with a little net and I can just scoop. And it's not as quick, but it's pretty quick.
Okay. So there may be something there yet. Have you done anything with not electrical shock, but with frequency waves, high frequency waves on the Sakari? Could that break them apart?
I bet it could, and I haven't done anything with that.
Okay, I'm done.
Might mess with the whales and dolphins in Glen Lake.
Crayfish.
Or Asian carp.
Cal, that's exactly the kind of thinking that I want to continue to brainstorm more and more on, because what light on the darkness will shed earlier, electrocution, sound waves, sonic waves, topical creams. We haven't even broached that subject, but I don't think that's somewhere we'll likely go because of the complexity of that. But I think what the research will allow us to do, though, is to tabulate in statistical format how people are swimming. Like for me, I would be a registered swimmer. I would be one of the volunteers because I do a lot of swimming throughout the summer in all parts of Glen Lake at all times of the day. And I have managed to be one of those people that if I reported my swimming behavior and activity and timing and my prevention strategies, I would show up as one of those guys who probably has the most hours swimming of anybody, or in the top 10%, and not get itch. So that's testimonial to the fact that, Ron, your comment is you can swim and you don't have to get itch if you don't want to. Now, you have to fit a certain profile. You have to be a good swimmer and you have to do this and that. But I think the outcome, I'm trying to think 2 and 3 years when we have all the data and we crunch the numbers and we look at the patterns of data, it's going to show that this is possible, that we can direct you to ways in which you can avoid getting swimmer's itch. And I think the other part that I want to add is that if we get somebody entrepreneurial to go out and do and render services, just like pest control companies will come to your house and spray for spiders and mosquitoes, and they'll take care of your rodents for you. So these people that come up for the lake want to buy service to get for reasonable dollars to get a certain service, like come and skim my shoreline. I don't want to do it and I'm not going to do it, but I'll get somebody to do it. And it'll cost X amount of dollars and it's reasonable. I'll have them do it. And if I'm getting good results from that, then I'm going to ask them to do it more. In fact, I'm going to go on a 3 to 5 year contract with them if they're that good and they're that cheap to come and keep doing it because it works. Anyway, that's
we have to show that it worked. That's the
Yes.
step we're on now, is to
Right.
show. Yeah.
That's probably a good transition for me. Cal is the guy who's going to give you the novel ideas and thoughts. I thought the frequency idea was really interesting. Mine is going to be more on the funding side, right? And to think about how to get this done. As we've, starting at the back end, and you've already just discussed this, this is going to require some kind of business, some kind of entrepreneur, somebody to make the product or perform the service or, service the product or whatever it happens to be. And that's a business. And so as I think about funding, call it venture capital, call it seed capital, how does one go about generating the funding for that kind of venture? And so, I'd ask you to think about various funding strategies. You talked about the enteric bacteria study here on Glen Lake being a model. I think that's an interesting idea. I think there are, and Ron, I'm impressed / influenced in my comments here by, this is not just a, somebody worried about their grandkids getting swimmer's itch, that ultimately this could also have real humanitarian issues worldwide and, blah, blah, blah. And you can articulate that far better. One of the things you ought to think about is a GoFundMe page. You start up, I wrote it down, PSI, Prevent Swimmer's Itch, or, Smash Sicaria, Inc. And you say GoFundMe, and for $10,000, I'll give you 50% of my company, and I'm going to generate data, and then I'm going to license these data to an entrepreneur. Here's my business model. So one is maybe you get individuals to bootstrap this. 2, think about a GoFundMe page around a company.
Yeah.
3, once you have a company, apply for grants. There's small business innovation SBIRs, right? $150,000. So I'd encourage you to think about that. On the GoFundMe side of things, Ron, you have now spectacular relationships, successful relationships with, I'm just going to make up numbers, right? Mm-hmm. 12 people on Glen Lake, maybe more, 10 on Lime Lake, 5 on another lake, 6 on another lake. You go out to, 50 people, they all put in, $500 to $1,000 in your new company. You're capitalized, you're generating data, you've got the vehicle, so on and so forth. So I'd encourage you to think about alternative funding strategies. And there I'm happy to brainstorm with you as well. But like the baffles, when we sort of had this discussion a year ago or whatever it was, I don't think that is the appropriate thing for members' dues, GLA dollars to go into. This is ultimately a business. We're not a venture capital firm. We're not a seed capital firm. And I don't think this is the sort of thing that the GLA should be taking members' money and putting it into. With that said, others may disagree, number one. But number two, I would like to actively help you, if that's of interest, in thinking about other funding strategies.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just off the top of my head, I don't have any interest in that. So that's not, I'm the guy that I just want to help people. And so I'm not interested in a GoFundMe and getting people to fund this. And then, we might come up with something and then take it to market. And
but Ron, you've got to figure out what your source of funding is to do this work.
Yeah. So what I was thinking was that lake associations would say, this is an important topic for us. And if your goal is to just prove to our people the various, the efficacy of the various strategies so that we can go to them and say, hey, if you do this, you're going to have an 80%, or if you do this, you got 95% reduction. That's valuable to us, to our members.
And then they're going to say, well, how do I do that? And you're going to say, well, somebody's going to have to start a company. Somebody's going to have to be able to provide this service or this product or to actually facilitate it. And, that's not, in my opinion, full stop, as a nonprofit company or organization, within our scope or mission.
Okay.
That's not to say that all the ideas can move forward. It's just how are you going to capitalize it? And yes, it will be a benefit to our members. And I'm not totally sold on Edward's idea that I think anything we can prove as being a high value to our membership that has to do with the water, that we have to totally outsource that funding reserve to make that happen. But that's just me too. And I'll think more about what you said, Edward, and maybe others want to chime in.
I just think there are, I think if you want to bring it back home, if you could, Ron, develop a model like we've done with the enteric study, with a dozen people on each of the 5 lakes or so that you work with and so on, that could start to generate some of these data and so on. But yeah.
Well, I think I'll bring this to a close because we know we got Edward leaving and I want to keep this short, but I'd like to set up a meeting again with a fuller group of people like Bill Meserve and Rick Fink and maybe some others. Ron, you're gonna maybe invite 1 or 2 from other lake associations to join us? Possibly?
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
He's got some leads on some really innovative thinkers, and I think people like that need to join us. So I'm going to look at have you look at your calendars, and maybe let's do it every 3 weeks. We meet again, kind of thing, on a 3-week interval. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. Rob, can I ask a question that's slightly, that's off topic, Ron? So Ron, one of the things I've been curious, I know you're planning to publish the results of last year's study relative to novel hosts, both the avian hosts as well as the snail hosts, as well as different worm types and so on. my question is any other laboratory anywhere in the world going to do or be able to validate our data? Is there anything going on that an independent third party is going to look at and validate our results? And my guess is that currently the answer is no, but like in any publication, anywhere it's a first, the
Right.
most critical thing is that it's a peer reviewed, but then secondly that it's repeated, and it's repeated by a third party. And I think that's going to be very, very critical ultimately for us to check the box on that nice new image that we have with the different ducks and different worms and different arrows and so on. Ultimately, we're going to need to really check that box from a scientific validity perspective.
I think there's
a third party validation of those data.
I'll just jump in quickly, and Ron, you can agree or disagree with this, or even Edward, or any others. But I think given the amount of dollars that it would take to do a third party validation of this study would be pretty pricey. And two, there's just not a lot of dollars that are swarming into the coffers of Swimmer's Itch researchers, right?
No, I really meant, quite frankly,
third party,
the other group, right? The Higgins Lake group and so on, or the Soviet Union. This is all over the world, right? I didn't mean, actually, I do mean not here.
Okay,
I do mean not us.
Right.
I mean a third party.
Yeah. But how I got what you're saying, Ron. How much research is going on with species differentiating? I mean, isn't this something like pretty new to all scientific worlds because the primers were just recently developed?
Yeah, we developed the primers. I know the other groups using those primers that we developed and published.
So maybe it's just a matter of time before this third independent party doing similar research.
Yeah, I think as far as like the different species going through the different ducks and geese, and that's all been validated already by the scientific literature validates all of those life cycles. So that I don't think needs validation. If you're talking about our 3 Lake study, that we're actually doing 2 years now, we're going to put it together in a publication, which will be peer-reviewed, publication. I think that's what Rob is saying. To repeat that study would just be a lot of money, and
I don't mean us. Anyway, okay. I'm good. I guess I wanted to just ask if you were aware of anybody.
I'm not. And the pushback I would have on that is it's been like 4 or 5 years since the other company and my company split, and I haven't seen one publication come from that group.
And you probably won't.
No, and it's like, if you got this greatest thing going, then publish it and let the world know. And we haven't seen any, and we just got the new species publication is going to come out maybe this week. It got accepted with minor revisions. We revised, resubmitted it about a week ago. So that new species paper in the Journal of Parasitology will be coming out in days. And so, and then the 3 Lake study we're shooting really big on that one for a high impact journal. And that'll be later because we're going to combine the 2 years. But, the only group that would do it is the other group. And I don't see anything coming out of that group. So other than some false information, and that's a whole different story.
That's a whole different story. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at October 6th, same time frame, 4:00 in the afternoon, with some thought that this might continue after we massage some of the thinking, and I'll create an agenda for then. Does that sound good?
It does, and I'll probably have an opportunity to talk to Bill and Dale and Rick and Andy, and pass on some of the stuff we talked about.
I'll share that this recorded video with all those people, so they'll have it.
Okay.
Trish.
Great.
Not to crush any creative ideas, But the thing that kept coming up in my mind is to be thinking of unintended consequences. Anytime we interfere with a biological system, we create unintended consequences. And so I am hesitant about some of
So
the
you don't want to bring in some other creature to add to our lake to, eat these things?
or even things like what happens if we zap them all and then they're not
Sonic.
food chain. I mean, they're important food chain, right?
Well,
Sonic
now they're
wave.
cooked.
But
Yeah.
we're-
Or introducing light in the middle of the night. What's that going to do to everything else that's light responsive in its biological processes? And again, like,
Yeah.
I'm just playing the devil's advocate.
No, you're not. You're saying good things.
Yeah.
Part of the business model would be doing environmental impact studies, which will
Yes.
only take 8 years.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Any final comments from anybody?
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.